Welcome to Analytics Nexus 2019, the premier virtual event for analytics best practices. This presentation is titled Data Strategy in Digital Transformation and will be presented by Jaisri, Chety. This is one webinar in a whole series of presentations you have access to beginning today. A few quick housekeeping items before I introduce this particular presentation. At any time, you can interact with this presenter or other presenters with questions or comments on Slack. The Slack address for Analytics Nexus is analyticsnexus.slack.com, and you should have received an email invitation to join if you registered in advance. If you didn't receive that email, you can find an invitation link to the Slack in the menu below, as well as in the resource list. Once you log into the Analytics Nexus Slack, you can find the channel for Jaisri to engage. Also, you can engage with us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @analytics_nexus. Finally, for questions on Analytics Nexus or Claravine, which is producing this event, feel free to email us at info@claravine.com. This presentation will be presented by Jaisri Chety. Jaisri is a strategic innovator and leader focused on enterprise-level analytic solutions, building high-performance technical and analytical teams, and solving problems through structured processes and technology that transforms businesses. She is a certified data management and digital analytics expert who has constantly professed and worked to make digital analytics gain due importance at all levels of the organization. With the aid of the right data strategy, she believes businesses can truly leverage digital transformation and serve their customers and society better. Jaisri, over to you.
Hello, everyone. This is Jaisri. My topic, as Transcend was saying, is on data strategy in digital transformation. We are in very interesting time in the evolution process today. Innovation is happening all around in almost every sector, in every industry. It is, it's changing completely. And what we see more and more is that the tracks of data strategy is converging very closely with the business strategy, especially when it comes to digital transformation. We see disruption and rapid change happening, everywhere. I thought this quote from Jeff Bezos was very apt. It is a very volatile times that we are living in, and the only best way businesses are going to survive is to constantly reinvent themselves. So if you see this graph on the right, this is actually from the book, which was written by Thomas Friedman, Thank You for Being Late. We can see the technology curve, how rapidly technology is changing. It is said that technology outbeats itself almost every year. It is, doubling. While the adaptation, especially the corporates, adapting to technologies at a much, much slower rate. There is a gap between, how technology is changing and how corporates are adopting to this change. We see this, impacting many industries, like the smartphone wiping out a very established photo industry altogether. We're seeing competition from unlikely sources, like the yellow cab did not anticipate that the Uber is going to wipe them out of business, or rental cars did not think Uber is going to impact them. So according to a Credit Suisse report, the average lifespan of corporation has fallen by almost 60 years. It was 60 years in 1950s, and currently the average lifespan of companies are close to 20 years. And 90% of the world data was just created in the last 2 years. And we're seeing this data explosion happening everywhere. The digital universe is growing by a factor of 10. data is estimated to reach close to 44 trillion GB in 2020. And most of this data was created in the last couple of years. If you see, that's the phenomenal rate how data is growing. And another factor that is causing all this change is the onset of the Generation Y and the Generation Z, the so-called millennials. This generation grew up with technology, so their attitude, both as customers and employees, are very different from the generations before. And by 2020, 50% of the workforce are going to be the millennials. So they are the digital entrepreneurs, they are the career multitaskers. So we have to up the game to keep our employees and our consumers interested in our brand. So it's very clear that we need to do something about this change that is happening all around us, especially industries to reinvent themselves, to up their game. They need to keep thinking ahead of the competition, not just within the industry, but overall across the space of digital and technology, how it is rapidly evolving. How do we keep upping our game? 90% of the CEOs believe the digital economy will impact their business, but not many are actually executing on the digital strategy, and probably that's where the opportunity lies, which we need to capitalize and ensure that we are ready for adopting the digital transformation. And to do that, how data strategy is very vital. In my view, the winning strategy for true digital transformation need to include the following three aspects. Firstly, data democratization, and data democratization is nothing but having the ability to provide your users with the right data at the right time and also in the right format so they can act on it immediately and leverage this data. Second aspect is making analytics agile. We see many industries, especially in the life sciences, we spend a lot of time analyzing the past 6 months, 8 months data to come up with algorithms and models like market mix modeling, which might even have an error margin of 5 to 6%. However, very often when these models come out, they're out of time, they're not relevant anymore. And so we need to come up with solutions that are capable of quick analytics, quick insight generation, so we are meeting the need of the day. And the third most difficult aspect, in my view, is to develop a data-driven culture where everyone in the organization, from the CEO to the intern, is able to take decisions based on data, based on insights that are being generated by the company. To execute on this strategy, I came up with 4 solutions, 4 data strategy tactics, if you will. Firstly, the technology solution architecture and data. We will have to review the orchestration across the different key systems and applications. This might involve review or reassemble of tools and solutions, or perhaps even build a new infrastructure that is scalable and flexible, but it will also allow the applications and systems to be well interconnected to facilitate data interoperability. Second, the focus on data infrastructure, how data is getting collected, where it is stored, how it is aggregated, how it is integrated, needs to be well thought out, planned, and have architect design that. How much of this data that we are bringing from different sources, some of this data could be in different formats, it might be from internal systems, from external systems, and how do we handle all this data in a safe, secure way and meet all the data demands. And once we bring in this data, we need to have robust solutions in place to govern this data across the systems, across tools, have good data governance processes and governing structure to ensure that the data that we are collecting is truly managed as an asset, and it is of good quality and it is fit for purpose. And finally, to drive this data-driven culture, we need to think of, our org structure, our people, are they in place? Are they well trained to leverage the data? So if not, what is the plan to induct or groom the data champions across the organization? This could mean, different measures like restructure or training or, performance appreciation, etc. All these great things cannot be achieved in a day. It has to be in a phased approach. Firstly, starting with the foundation. How do we build the data foundation? And then moving to the next phase, which is integrated, optimized, and finally differentiated, where data is treated as a true differentiator. It is monetized, and this is the path or roadmap that how do we take data from just data to becoming good data to good insights, and insights to monetizing data and making them relevant and differentiated. I tried to elaborate a little bit on the data maturity curve, which might be different for different organizations, but typically at the foundational level, we are looking at designing and implementing the solution, the application architecture, developing data catalogs, lineage, defining, what is good data, identifying who are these data stewards or data champions. And most often the data governance organization at this stage is non-existent. So defining, right data governance organization, what it would mean for each organization is at the foundational level. The next level, which is more, how we integrate the data across the data platform from applications and how applications are connected to provide and leverage data just in time. Good data quality measures are established at this stage. Then wherever we see there is a gap, can we hire more data SMEs or train data SMEs to become competent and leverage the data that is now getting more that is now available for users. And the data governance process at this stage is more or less setting it up, having the processes, the policies set up, the policies that are relevant for each industry identified and integrated into the data governance process. The next stage is where data is freely available, data is of good quality. So here we're looking at the data architecture, which allows data orchestration not only between applications, but it is also enabled to leverage artificial intelligence and intelligence-driven automation that can drive action in different applications or triggers in applications. Or even human affected actions that can be induced at this stage, and at this stage we're looking at a strong MDM or master data management solution being in place. The data quality is extremely robust. There are good data governance practices, well-trained data SMEs across the organization who know how to take decisions based on data. And the final, the state of nirvana is the differentiated state where data is being used as a differentiator. Data and analytics is being used as a differentiator, coming up with new products At this stage, the data architecture is capable of integrating data and applications from new and even open data sources, from external systems, different formats of data, image, voice, whatever other formats that are available. The data quality is excellent. All employees across divisions are able to take data-driven decisions, and data is being applied for innovative use cases. I thought I'll start off the next section with a quote from Nikola Tesla. This quote, is one of my favorite. When this was written 100 years back, when nobody even thought of wireless technology, and he was saying, when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole earth will be converted into one huge brain. He was talking about wireless technology even before anybody knew what wireless was. And probably we are at this junction in digital transformation where we need to look at new avenues, things people have not thought of, and building that infrastructure to enable our organization to think of solutions that are completely novel. So technology should transcend the present as well as the obvious. So this particular quote, it was a sentence from one of the papers that I was reading in high school, but I thought it summarized my thought process. It put very succinctly in words. Digital transformation maturity requires a strategic approach for a time of hyperconnectivity with a mix of human and automated interactions and transactions between people, between systems, and between devices to generate actionable insight and value for and through human and social benefits. I felt this was, it put everything together in a small sentence, and the key aspects that I wanted to draw out of this and highlight was hyperconnectivity. Having that hyperconnectivity across systems and processes is extremely important, and having a system that is flexible, that is scalable, and also leveraging artificial intelligence. How do we make this more and more automated and not have dependency on a person taking an action out of it? How much of it can be completely artificial intelligence generated action, but the effect could be through human or machine driven interaction. And the open system architecture, where we can pull in as many different open sources, pull out a certain application, plug in a new application. So if the technology that we put in place, the infrastructure, the architecture that we build enables these four aspects, then I think we are ready for the future. This is a very high level architecture that supports automation and orchestration. I pulled out some of the specifics. I'll try to delve into some of the specific systems and application in the next slide, but it is agnostic to what kind of systems we put in place. But it starts from the left and reads through the to the right. It starts with all the different data sources that we have, and it moves into can we put it into the into data storage or real time message ingestion. Then there is a processing layer, be it in batch processing or stream processing. And then there's a machine learning aspect, which we spoke about, enabling that artificial intelligence and how it feeds either of the processing layers. And then the data is stored in an analytical data store, which supplies analytics and reports. But at the same time, how much of it can we directly be input into end applications where it can be put to immediate use and not based on any triggers. So it is supplying the action into the end application, which is customer facing or user facing. So in this slide, this is an adaptation of the previous high-level slide. This is a little more detailed slide. It leverages the Lambda architecture. There are data sources on the left, and it's leveraging the Azure data store, data factory, and all the Azure applications to have the same result in the end. There's a batch layer which is supporting the analytical reports or dashboards, but there is also a speed layer which is directly plugging into mobile or web applications to drive that interaction with the customers, to drive interaction with maybe even systems. In this case, if there is a IoT-driven system, how do we interact with that system? So these are the two layers, automated layer and then the batch layer, which is more for reporting and analytics. We spoke about technology and how technology is changing, but the underlying fact is it's generating data, and that we all know is the new oil. That the data is what is becoming the most important asset for many organizations. So how do we look at this data now, and what should be our strategy? How do we leverage this data? Are we treating it as a true asset? Is another aspect of digital transformation, how we enable this data to come up with new ways to apply digital, new ways to respond to our customers and users. So data, and how we handle data is going to be the next. Before we go into how we leverage this data, we need to understand what are the challenges with this data, with data today. Firstly, data is generated in so many different places, and different data stewards are inputting data. Data is getting assembled from different sources, and it cannot be trusted because these don't add up. The same data from different systems or different countries do not add up, and then it raises a lot of doubt in the user's mind, if this data can be trusted. And there are same data in many versions because it probably how it is tagged or collected from different systems is very different. And perhaps they also have different perspective and interpretation. And when you look at it either from a sales side or a marketing side, or even within marketing, if you look at the data from an email campaign manager's view or a website web traffic manager's point of view, they might have different interpretations of the same data. And there are different demands of the data across the organization. I've seen data demands being different across different departments, different countries. Some data is extremely important, but in another country that is not relevant. They want a new source of data. And also the lack of processes to look at the quality of the data. How do we quantify how accurate the data is a challenge in many organizations. So it is very clear that for data being such a critical part of the transformation process, or just for the organization itself, data is now very important. So governance is starting to play a bigger role in many organizations to make sure this data is of good quality and can be trusted, and it is fit for purpose. So setting up a data governance organization in an organization is important, and there are 4 broad aspects to the data governance framework. The output, what we're all trying to measure, is the data quality, how good the data is, how consistent, To do that, we need to have data definitions, data catalogs, data lineage, and so on documented. So that's the first aspect of a data governance framework. Secondly, the policies and the compliance, and these are different across different industries. And new policies and compliance keep coming up. We know GDPR was a big topic in the last couple of years. a lot of money has been spent by organizations to comply to GDPR. So data governance is getting more and more important, not just to manage data, but also to be compliant and in the regulation that are being put in place. Data security, who gets access to data. When we talk about data democratization, we should also have the bells and whistles in place to ensure that the data is not getting misused. So what kind of data security measures are in place, and who needs to have permission for critical data, sensitive data, and so on. And then finally, a team of data stewards who operate on the data and who manage the data on a day-to-day basis, and how are they structured, and what is the governance around that. When it comes to data quality, there are three dimensions that are important. Firstly, what do we measure? What kind of attributes or values that we need to measure? Is it the brand name or the product name, the date range, therapy area, campaign code? And are there any reference data sets that are readily available, like the ISO data values or taxonomies that are already available? And are there any standardized data values that we can leverage? The second dimension is, how do we measure this data quality? Can we look at a measurement of accuracy or completeness, timeliness? It could be different in an industry like life sciences, where you're looking at a global program, local consistency versus a global consistency. And the third dimension is, what is the context of the data quality measure? What are the systems under scope? Are there any sampling techniques that are available that can be selected? How frequently they need to be measured? And do we need to have like a test method or not? So that's the three aspects of how do we measure data quality. To delve a little deeper into the data quality measurement practices, there are 5 ways to measure completeness. Is there any data that is missing? What percentage of the data that is missing can be a quantitative score. Accuracy can be put into accuracy data score. This came in very handy for me to demonstrate, how we need to put a data stewardship team in place, because we were able to showcase the accuracy score for data. When you put something in a number, then it starts getting a lot of attention across the board. In consistency, based on certain intrinsic trends, is the data set flowing consistently? Is there a positive, negative gap? When there is a change, either positive or negative, can we raise a flag for somebody to go and look at that data more closely? Relevance is is the data relevant in respect to other metrics or other range of values, where we can look up and see if it is, say like a conversion rate is, if it is relevant to traffic rate, and suddenly we see it is not correlating, then probably there's something wrong with the data. And uniqueness, if you're expecting data to be unique, and if it is, if you see repeated values, and again there is some problem with the data. So how do we measure that and act on that data quality? Finally, data governance and data quality is a continuous process. It starts with stakeholders giving inputs, and then the data governance team putting the audits and KPIs and metrics in place, and a data governance steering committee reviewing the data and the data quality wherever there are gaps, fixing the data quality, ensuring that the quality is improving, and then communicating the quality scores and how the data can be trusted back to the stakeholders. So this is a continuous process. It's not a project. It's like a program that needs to be established. To sum it up, the last aspect of the strategy that I was mentioning is data culture. And this quote from Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, says it all. With the right tools, insight can come from anyone, anywhere, at any time. So, when that happens, the organization develop what we call as a true data culture. And I think that's when innovation also happens, when we give data democratization and the agility to work with insights and data and analytics in the hands of the users, and they can truly put it into the right use. And this calls for data culture across the organization and a different mindset. So an enlightened digitally driven data organization will have to have some of these or all of these in place. There should be a top-down approach, right from the very top. If they act on data-driven actions, and then it permeates into all the levels across the organization. And analysts should not be one department or a function. It should be, everyone in the organization should be capable of identifying and interpreting data, interpreting analytics, and use it for their day-to-day decision making. And IT and data enablers will be tasked with building and maintaining the right infrastructure, will be the data champions who are responsible for inputting, managing the data, so the data can be truly effective and used as an asset across the organization. And another aspect, which this is my personal favorite, is having data curators, special teams dedicated to governing the data and critical data and curating this data sets. So, we touched upon, the three aspects of data democratization, agile analytics, and building the data-driven culture across the organization. So, in summation, I want to read to you about this quote. Apologies, any Star Wars fans. This is a quote from Star Trek. Something important is happening. Read it as not to me, but to every one of us, and we need to explore it. We cannot stay put in one place any longer, and we are all going through this transformation, and it is happening in every cell. Everywhere we see there is transformation, so let's be ready for the change.
Thank you, Jaisri, for sharing this material. It has been a very enlightening presentation. Just a reminder to our guests, you can engage Jaisri with questions and or comments at her channel on Analytics Nexus Slack. Thank you again.